Good evening to my late night people, or good morning or good afternoon if you happen to catch this live video on the replay. So tonight we're going to talk Greenleaf, and this is just a casual conversation. If you do join in live, then I'll be glad to include your comments in our discussion. Otherwise, we will be subjected to hearing what I want to talk about from my outline. For those of you who are not in the loop, Greenleaf is one of OWN Television's feature shows, and Greenleaf is actually currently in its second season. And I am a fan. I'm off and on with watching it, but I definitely catch up when I miss it. So, um, Greenleaf is a show that is rooted in talking about the Black church. And I'm going to talk to you about my personal opinion and feelings about it, as well as a little bit of research that I've done to talk about what the creator of the show has to say about it, etc. And while this show is dealing with the Black church, it is digging into some areas that are not as prominently discussed, I would say, in my opinion, in church. It is definitely discussed behind closed doors between a few people here and there, but not as much on a global scale within the Black church. So some of those topics include things, and before I go into the topics, I want to say that some of these issues are a bit heavy, and you may hear me be a little bit playful in my dialogue or conversation tonight for our purposes, but nothing about the heavy topics. I don't want you to think that I take them lightly or that I find these issues to be funny. I do find dialogues around these specific topics to be necessary and important for the church to be abreast of at large. So here we go. A huge issue, and spoiler alert if that's necessary for me to say. So if you're listening to this and you need to catch up on Greenleaf, then you may want to tune not in to what I'm saying. But child molestation and rape, or said differently, sexual abuse is a huge topic on Greenleaf. I would say generational, multi-generational, which is very interesting. There are issues with adultery, fornication, homosexuality, misuse of church funds, and gambling, to name a few. If there were someone else on here to join me, you could chime in. There's also been bits of alcoholism, I would say, and some drug usage. You may be thinking like when, but I remember the first season when Zora would sniff rather, her ADHD medication. So, and there's also marijuana usage, I think, but I could be making it up. No, they talked about it. They may not have done it actually. So, Greenleaf, I think, does a great job of giving a very good depiction of what goes on in church in general, a Black church, and especially depicting a mega church. I love how they're painting the picture. I think that Lynn Whitfield and her co-star do an excellent job of playing, Bishop and First Lady. And I do want to acknowledge that the character, Lady May, who Lynn Whitfield plays, bothered me greatly during the first season of Greenleaf. I was very much bothered by her. I couldn't at first understand how she was able to, maintain her image and function in her role of First Lady so much to a fault that she couldn't take time out to care about issues such as her daughter's sexual abuse by her own brother and her unfortunate, untimely death of one of her daughters due to this, which before her daughter committed suicide, she actually was in a lifestyle that sounded to be described like a downward spiral, where she was into drugs and promiscuity, so on and so forth. So I was just a bit bothered by Lady May in the beginning when she was so frustrated with Grace when Grace returned to the mansion, and we'll say it that way. And I just couldn't understand why Lady May was seeming to want to defend everyone else and not be on the side of Grace. But as I have gotten to the second season of Greenleaf, I love the character development. I love how well thought out the character development has been. We can see the progression in the characters. We can see growth. We can see transitions and changes. And what do I mean? So they allowed us to see the image that Lady Mae wanted to portray. And then they finally revealed the multi-generational abuse, because she unfortunately was sexually abused by her own father, whom is the father of her brother that was sexually abusing not only her daughters, but other young women in the church. So these young ladies were technically children or teenagers. I'm not sure as to how young they were when Uncle Mac, the character who was portrayed, would begin to sexually abuse these young ladies. So Lady Mae, I had problems with that the first season, but now actually I find Lady Mae to be showing more like humanistic qualities. I think Lady Mae is now, we're beginning to see a softer side of Lady Mae. Because before, again, she just kind of irked me. I was like, okay, I can't deal with Lady Mae. Lady Mae is too much concerned about this image, but that's real. Like, that exists. Whether we want to deal with that or not, that is real. In some forms of church in general. It's real in some forms of Black church, where we have this wall and this image that must be portrayed by the first family, for lack of a better term. So I think that Lynn Whitfield is doing an excellent job with portraying that character with what I have seen. I would also like to say that, and I watched, I don't know if any of you tuned into after the late show that they own would feature occasionally, following some of the Greenleaf episodes that was hosted by a woman. I can't think of her name, but I love those shows where they would bring on some of the cast of Greenleaf and they would give them a chance to speak about different characters and scenarios. And they also would have guests who were not a part of the show to come and chime in as well. I'm saying that to say, on one of those episodes, Iyanla Vanzant appeared and she talked about the role of Uncle Mac. And, you know, being a woman who is versed in sexual abuse, she discussed the fact that Uncle Mac is this character who you hate and love. And it's relatable for people who, unfortunately, who have been victims to ugly things such as sexual abuse. And she's like, you know, that's why he's positioned in the way he was. So if you remember Uncle Mac in the public eye was Man of the Year. He was voted to be Man of the Year for his community. And he was very polished. He seemed to be a man of great prestige. And beyond that, the ugly parts of Uncle Mac were that he was the sexual abuser of these young girls. And it was ugly. It was harsh. And this was all in the same man, you know. So in one instance, you know, like, you're like, how can this be? How can people continue to pretend like they don't know the things that he's doing? Because don't get me wrong, there are people who were not aware of the abuse that Uncle Mac was doing, but I believe that there were far more people who caught wind to it, such as his sister. His sister, Lady Mae, had to know this. Her father was doing it to her, so when word came to her about her daughters being abused, and then eventually the other young ladies in the church being abused by Uncle Mac, I think it was more convenient for her, for one, having suffered this same type of trauma, to try to shut it out. Like, I'm going to try to shut this out and act like I don't know anything about it because I went through this as a child. I don't want to relive this. That's number one. Number two, it is her brother. So though it is an ugly thing, when you study accounts of abuse, there are accounts of abuse where, and I'm trying to be very careful with my terminology. You know, some people are not comfortable with the terminology victim, so I'm trying to refrain from saying that. But if I do, please excuse me if it's something that you find to be offensive, because I can't find a better term right now. But those who are labeled to be victims of sexual abuse have been noted to have these different feelings of affection for their abuser at different times, or sympathy for their abuser. So I'm saying that to say I can totally see Lady Mae transferring those things. Like, she had this love-hate relationship with her own father. Now, at first, we didn't meet her father, and because they were estranged from each other. But I'm sure we all remember the scary death scene when her father was on his deathbed in the hospital, and he kissed her in the mouth, and she like just gave in to it, because that was the nature of their relationship, though it was totally awkward for me, and it made everybody else, I believe, feel totally grossed out. But so going back to that, so that's her relationship with her father. I believe that she totally transferred those feelings over to her brother. And she did not want to relive that. She didn't want to have to address that, though it was her own daughters who were being abused. That's my opinion. Somebody else may add some additional layers to that. I see some people have come in tonight and some have fallen back off. But if you happen to be watching me currently live and you want to add to this conversation, please drop your comments in so that we can bring in your voice as well to this discussion. We get that part about the child abuse and sexual abuse. I'm going to say a bombshell for me on the current season. I never expected for Grace to come forward and say that Uncle Matt tried to do the same thing to her. And I'm not clear. It sounds like he made an attempt, but he wasn't successful, or either he got, he made some advances in this. And I just never saw that coming when she was being a warrior, trying to convince other young ladies to come forward and discuss what Uncle Mac was doing to them. And after her sister killed herself, there was no way you could have made me believe that she too suffered it because of how much she was trying to rely upon these other young ladies' testimonies. And don't get me wrong, I understand that there's probably statute limitations involved if she did desire to come forth due to how long ago it was when he, made the offense to her. But yet and still, I just thought that was a very interesting plot twist, which is good writing, when they brought in Meryl Dandridge's character, Grace, admitting this season that Uncle Mac also tried to do the same thing to her. So next, one of those interesting, exciting topics, unfortunately, is adultery on the show. So back to Lady Mae, it's so interesting to see her with this image that she wants to maintain and to uphold. And so when we learned that she herself had an affair with this family friend, that's what I'll call Lionel, it was definitely an interesting piece of information to have. And something that I love when we think about characters in general is a character that is well done is going to be multifaceted. It's going to be well-rounded because that's what people are, no matter how we may desire to be portrayed or to be viewed in society. There are different sides to all people. I don't care what people say. People don't like to hear this, like, I am who I am, in the lights off, doors open, doors closed. I believe there are different faces that people put on, even the best of people. For example, when you're at work, you're in a professional setting. If you have been trained to do so, you would be putting on a different face than when you would do when you're relaxed at home with your family. That's a clean-cut example without any other things entering into that dynamic. So we have the adultery with Lady Mae and Lionel. We also have, as we were listening with the bishop and Lady Mae's sister, it was alluded to, and her sister is played by Oprah. I can't think of her sister's name right now. But there was an affair there that we just heard about. But I kind of saw that coming because I believe it was during the first season when Bishop was walking with Oprah's character and they had this little close moment. And to me, it was alluded to that he wondered what his life would be like had he been in a relationship with her instead of her sister. So there was some foreshadowing of what we finally know to be true, that he actually, and he said he didn't have an affair. I think he tried to imply that he had one sexual encounter, but it's adultery either way. So there's a lot of fornication. The pastors like to get it on in Greenleaf. We don't see the bishop and first lady doing anything currently per se, but we definitely get a lot of action from Grace. How could I forget Jacob? Jacob, maybe because this season he has been renewed and, he's on this fresh wind from the Holy Spirit and from God with trying to venture out and start, first his new church and then going back to, first going to basically Skank's church in direct opposition to his father, then launching his own church, which was truly outside, open air, then back to the church. As we know, it was acquired in an interesting way. So, but when we first met Jacob, he was hot and heavy, unfortunately, with his father's secretary from the church in the first season. And his wife And to me, he and his wife, their relationship reflected all of the toxicity that you would expect from a known about adulterous affair that was ongoing. But another layer to the issues that we saw between Jacob and Carissa at that time was not only, to me, dealing with his affair components, but what I also saw in Carissa was a woman who lost all belief, all faith, and all hope in her husband's abilities as a man. Now, I know that someone would gladly debate with me and say, well, it was warranted and he was cheating on her and she knew about it. So, of course, she would feel a certain way. And those things are true. I know that I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and, in context, I can totally get how a woman could be, feeling some type of way if she's knowing that her husband is having an affair openly, in the sense of where she knows about it and it continues. So I totally can get how Carissa could have that attitude where it feels like, she was always having just a moment where she's just stuck on something. But it always did scream to me in that first season how her character felt like it was tearing her husband down or treating him as though she was wiser than him or she knew better than him and he didn't have any knowledge. And I believe that his responses to her, and her behavior coupled with the way his parents treated him, because at that time, to me, Jacob wasn't the way Jacob was portrayed to me, but according to how the characters treated him in the first season, I thought that he was truly someone who had no desire to be in ministry. I thought that he was operating out of his calling, and he was just doing something because it was the family business. That's how I perceived the character of Jacob in the first season. So to me, what they've done in the second season is a completely different spin, with his coming back into good graces, I should say. So those are some interesting layers there as well. I love to think about Grace's character, Meryl Dandridge. It's really interesting to find Grace, to get to know Grace as she's finding herself back in church, is the way I'll call it. So when we're introduced to Grace, we understand that she's coming. If I believe her career was journalism, if I'm not mistaken, or she was on television in some capacity. And so we know that she was a former pastor who was driven away from home due to the issues with her sister being sexually abused by her uncle. So she was driven away from home and she became estranged from her family for many years. And then we have this abrupt return when she comes back for her sister's funeral only, or so she thinks. And then she decides to stay behind. So when she made that abrupt decision, so now we have this woman who's a former pastor who has walked away from church, because if I understand correctly, her daughter Sophia didn't have any church experience or awareness of church. Well, I remember at that dinner table scene that was so gripping in the beginning that they mentioned going to church, I think on holidays or something to that effect. So maybe it wasn't the way I remember it to be the first time I tried to explain it. But to see her going from pastor and being referred to as this pastor who could bring the fire and the word that she would deliver for God, to this woman who essentially had nothing to do with church. The way she's described in her life was to me very much, it didn't seem to be a life that wanted to connect with God the way it's described to me, unless I'm missing a point. So those of you who are currently watching, chime in, let me know if I'm missing something. But so it was interesting to see this woman who to me is stepping from a place of probably being mad with God, frustrated with God, definitely knowing that God exists. I don't think that she ever moved to being agnostic or atheist. I think she definitely knew that God exists, but I would describe her as somebody who was suffering from hurt from her family. Church hurt, of course, came along with that because her family is our servants of the church. And so to see her go from that to now trying to ease her way back into being a pastor and trying to pick and choose which things work for her, because we definitely know that she has no problem with jumping into bed with people. I'm not saying that she's doing it with everybody, but I forgot about the first character who was her childhood friend who left during the first season, who was getting married to somebody, and she definitely had a sexual relationship with him, no matter how brief. So we forgot about him, and then now her current love interest is the character played by the lovely, handsome Rick Fox. So and again, though he's somebody who's shaky in his faith, she has found a relationship with him, and their relationship definitely incorporates sexual activity. So on one hand, I'm kind of perplexed by this because I believe that one part of Grace wants to help Rick Fox's character to find God, or to help him to come back into being in a place of relationship with God or trust God. So on one hand, I'm like, okay, now if you're going to let that be your goal, and that's my perception, then I don't see how you can sleep with this man and try to get this to come along at the same time. Now, maybe that's just me, maybe for the character of Grace, she doesn't find this to be problematic, but I think it can be a bit sticky if we want him to come back into trying to be in the right relationship with God. So we also know that we listed homosexuality is something that is being dealt with on Greenleaf. And as we know, as portrayed in the show, it may not be readily discussed in some Black churches. I think now in 2017, with all the different things going on in our world and in our climate, it may be more so discussed. I could be wrong. I could be naive, but I think it is. If it's not discussed, it's definitely visible. So anybody else want to say something about that? Or add any context for that about your own experience? Let me know. But I love how what I felt was very real when we have the character of Carlton, who was the musician who I believe co-directed the choir with Charity, or maybe directed the choir when Charity, as an assistant to Charity when she didn't do it herself. And I love this issue, and I believe that this was addressed in the conversation that he had with Lady Mae about how homosexuality is maybe not always addressed or ignored in the Black church, and how yet and still stereotypically homosexual men have been known to be heavily involved in choirs and how the music is appreciated. And so he kind of goes there. So that's kind of forcing the viewers of the show and the characters in the show to deal with this unspoken dynamic. And I also love this additional layer of what I think is done in church, where we can know something's going on, but we're not going to talk about it. So since we're not going to talk about it, then you better not do anything to make us really see it. So what am I saying? Carlton seemed to be, the church was okay with Carlton's presence until his husband was brought into play. And I can't remember if he was originally married or if he became married, and that is why all of a sudden now it's like, okay, I need to be able to worship with my husband. He needs to be visible. So I thought that was very interesting how they also addressed that, because that's a big deal to me in Black church about how, so we might have a phone conversation about this with one or two people, but we're definitely not going to bring this to the forefront. So like, okay, Carlton is cool. He's an awesome musician, and, we want him to be a part of this as long as we can't see his gayness. So, and I'm saying it like that for a reason, like as long as we don't get to see it, then, we all right. But then when it's visible, now that you want to bring your husband to the church, and now we got a problem with this. So Makiba said, you watch Greenleaf and you are enjoying the season, and it's showing the human side of the members of the church. I completely agree. I personally believe that they have been dealing with the human side from inception to now, but you tell me if I'm missing something about your comment. I think they're definitely dealing with the human side a bit much, a lot. At first, I will also tell you one of my pushbacks as somebody, I think this shouldn't be a surprise to those of you who know me, but I have grown up in church, in the Black church. But as an adult, I've experienced a variety of different types of churches and denominations. So I'm saying that to say, at first I was mad at Greenleaf because I thought it was going to be very stereotypical. I thought they would only traverse these waters of what we stereotypically say about the Black church. But now I'm seeing a bit more balance. Makiba also said, right, you have to wear your ethnicity. You don't have to wear your sexuality. That's big. That's deep, Makiba. No, that's deep. So, but I would challenge that with this. Now, stay with me. My challenge is in cross-cultural settings, and so I got to frame this the right way, because I don't know if this is a within group problem or an out group problem. This is what I mean. If you're in a setting, I'm used to being Black, I'm Black. If So I'm in a predominantly white setting, and someone makes me believe that some part of my cultural blackness, I cannot express it because I'm in this white setting. That would be a similar dynamic to me of, okay, don't come to church with your husband when you're a man. And let me know if that's clear, McKee, because I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is that there are people, let's use example. I hate this, but growing up like, oh, you talk white or you do this, that, and the third. But what if you're in a place and it's like, okay, perfect example. So the last time we had our conversation, we talked about Insecure. On Insecure, Molly, who's an attorney, pulls this intern aside because they work at this predominantly white firm, and Molly was like, girl, you pretty much being too black at work. That's in essence how she pulled this girl to the side. And the girl was like, whatever, I've been doing me and it's working. And actually the partners came to Molly, and these partners are white, and were trying to say in every other word but saying, yeah, she acting, she doing too much of being black at work and she needs to stop. So I think that that's another way that it can deal with ethnicity. So sorry I went all the way on that tangent, but I just want to remember that. So with Grace in between the sheets, she needs to feel love, and contact is part of the love she needs. Okay. I wonder, I have my own thoughts about this. I don't know if it's love though. So it could be. So Insecure is on HBO. And right now, HBO Now, because they have HBO Now and they also have HBO Go. But HBO Now is an app that you can get for free for 30 days. So you can watch HBO Now for 30 days, and you can go ahead and get you some Insecure on, and if you want to, Game of Thrones. But I'll talk about it another time because I tried that too and I don't know. But anyway, but so back on this very interesting dialogue. So I don't know that Grace is necessarily feeling love, but maybe she is. I'm not going to say she's not. I don't know. That could be something. I think that Grace is definitely searching. I think that Grace is trying to balance out the woman who she's been since she separated from her family, and the family business is ministry, and who she is now that she's back, because there's a part of her that has to hold on to the woman that she's become, but also trying to be in right relationship, I would say, with God, because I don't really, we only glean what they tell us about Grace's past life, and past of when she left her family, but we don't really know it. So I don't know. That's just my perspective, but I think it's very interesting how they're allowing Sophia to be, I'm going to say on fire about the Lord. I'm going to say they're not putting her in some other box. So I think it's very interesting that they're doing that with her character when she is Grace's daughter. Okay, so I'm gonna jump aside. So we also they deal with gambling, misuse of church funds, but there's a big issue that is going on in Greenleaf right now that is irking my nerves, and I can't believe that I'm just not talking about it. Can we talk about Zora being a teenager, and she's in this abusive relationship, and her parents are completely missing the mark? So my kids are babies. I don't have teenagers yet, but that's like my biggest fear, my nightmare, because you hear people talk about, when kids hit a certain age, they kind of gravitate away from their parents and they want to be more so around friends, and they don't talk to you, they shut you out, they close their door, they lock their doors. But I'm like, Lord, even if teenagers doing this, like, can you totally be this oblivious to your daughter? Like, she getting abused now. So Makeba said the total opposite for niece, cousins, or yes, you got it. So from when we were talking about Sophia. Yeah, so like I'm so bothered by this, like, and the thing that I love that they're doing, that she's with this prominent teenager. I want to call him a figure because he's a teenager, Isaiah. He's a singer, and so like it seems that from the church's perspective, he's like this great young man, and he's a celebrity. Let's just be honest. Like, they don't know about his person. It's because he's I'm calling him a celebrity in the gospel community, I guess. He's getting that fanfare. And I'm like, and they are completely missing it. I'm like, why is no one trying to see that this little girl is being abused? Like, she also lost her virginity, which that's another level of conversation her parents need to have with her. But I am extremely concerned that this little girl is now in this abusive relationship. So Zora is great at the facade she has had to portray in this family. That is true. But she is. I'm not going to lie to you, because I'm using the information we have from being behind the wall. So she is great at the facade. But the thing I don't like is she's doing this role very well. She's playing the role of that teenager who is what's the word I want to use? You know, the teenager who's acting like I don't have any time. I don't care nothing about what family doing. Like I'm just like I'm bored all the time with y'all. I'm gonna act like I'm dull around y'all, and it's all the time because it's hiding. And you said that she's great at this facade, but I need somebody to disrupt what she has going on and shake this little girl up and get her out this abusive relationship. Like I want to hurt that little boy. That's just really bothering me. And I need for Sophia to catch wind too. Like I think clearly Sophia doesn't like what's the little boy name? Come on, what's my man name? What's the little boy name, Akiva, that Zora is dating? I can't believe I forgot his name. Isaiah, right? Isaiah. So I want Sophia to even notice like what's going on with Isaiah. And so that's a problem for me. And I rewatched not last night's episode, but the episode prior to that where they were at the debutante rehearsal. And his acting was driving me crazy. Now, I did hear from somebody who used to be on Disney Channel. I don't know. I didn't research him. But he was driving me crazy when he was outside with that acting, when he pushed into that wall, because I thought it was a bit much. But from a soap opera perspective, or even if he was supposed to be a teenager who was like high or something, I guess that could work. I guess, you know, the way he was portraying the character could work. So I'm going to take a breath. I see some of y'all popping on. If you want to chime in, please chime in with your thoughts and feelings about Greenleaf, okay? And so we can have a dialogue. Earlier this morning, I saw a couple of people talking about Greenleaf, and my friend said that Zora gives her a problem. Like she doesn't like Zora, and I was quickly like, why are you saying that? She said, because she just makes her nervous as a parent. So Makiva said, you were hoping that her mom was going to grab her arm and she would flinch. Me too. Did the mom see her bruises? I just knew that was going to happen. But what really broke my heart is that was a moment when her mother slapped her. And look, let's be honest, that happened with mamas and teenager girls. I don't care what nobody say. But anyway, at least the ones I know. But no. But I was really hurt that, you know, the same day that she's abused by her boyfriend, her mama slapped her in the face. So, and mom completely missed, you know, the bruising, like you said, like that. I was waiting for that moment and it did not happen. I'm also concerned about at what moment do you get in, and we all remember being teenagers, and for those of us who are women, we remember being teenage girls. So I remember being a teen. I remember you thinking that you were alone in your problems. I remember thinking you can't talk to your parents. But I'm like, at what point do you know you need to? Like, and now I can say this as an adult. I'm like, that bothers me. Like, there needs to be a place where no matter the dynamic, when you have parents who love you, or guardians who care about you and love you, you need to have a line where it's like, okay, I need to talk to somebody so I can get some help. And I'm just concerned that this is not happening, because I'm like, after all of that, like when he did the thing in the car, she had the bruise on her head, and now, you know, this issue with the wall, like I just could not believe that she didn't tell them, like her mom. She needed an open hand slap to the mouth, disrespect. Well, she probably did, but she was also being abused by her boo. So I don't know. That's the thing that's frustrating me the most. I need somebody to come get Zora. I need her daddy to pay her some attention. Look, that's really making me mad. So I don't know. That's another issue. Like, here we go again with the different layers of them dealing with things that really do happen in church. You know, like I know it's supposed to be black church, but I'm going to say it's church in general as well. There are unfortunate situations where some pastors and their families can be so engulfed in serving the church, they completely miss out on what their kids are doing. But I also would say that happens with teenagers a lot, period, whether it's church or not. So I'm not going to only let us bad mouth church, because, look, you know, I'm a proponent of church. But yeah, so I don't know. I just, I really want, I want them to pay attention. I want them to pay attention to Zora. And they are doing a very good job, I agree, Makiba, with developing this story of abuse. So let's talk about Basie Skanks and Tasha Skanks. First of all, the first time you heard their name, you know, you dropped your mouth. You was like, ain't no way in the world they let them call this character Basie Skanks. Though it exactly depicts what they are. And in case you didn't watch the different specials, the creator of the show said that he created that name Basie Skanks because he wanted to choose the most ridiculous, bogus name to describe this, you know, this character. And he was like, there's no way that they'll let me keep this name when the show gets started. And they did. So, like, it's hilarious. Every time we hear them say so-and-so Skanks, it makes me crack up. You have friends whose mates abuse them, alienate them from family and friends is next. It's so true, Makiba. And actually, let me go back to there because I was going to deviate from that, but I have to go there. I will never forget, a few years back, I was listening to the radio here in Atlanta, And there was a full like a conversation I felt that lasted for several hours about young ladies who were abused by their teenage boyfriends. And I'm sure we all know somebody, you know, when we knew of someone when we were younger who had this, but I just couldn't believe the amounts of callers who called in and acknowledged that they were being abused and they were a teenager, or either they were abused as a teenager. Because again, I'm like, what the world? Like, so again, I don't want to be super critical, judgmental, because my kids are now babies. It frightens me is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm like, what do we need to do as parents to stay abreast of what's happening with our teenagers? Because that's scary. I'm like, how are you in an abusive relationship as a teen and your parents do not know it? Like, there were girls who were talking about guys who knocked their teeth out, like that drastic. I had a friend, unfortunately, back in the day who, you know, she dated a guy who busted the entire front windshield out of her car, and he did all sorts of other crazy things. And I have another friend who went through some horrible things, and, you know, now some of that shifted into college, so that's more easy to conceal from your parents, unfortunately. But I'm just truly concerned. I'm bothered by that. I'm so glad that they're dealing with this on the show. But what I want to see on the back end is them address how are the adults going to handle these situations. That's what I need to see, because it can't just be all this stuff going on with teens and we don't know nothing until it's too late. But, it just occurred to me, Nakiba, and whomever else is listening still. It just occurred to me, this family has multi-generational issues with abuse. Like, so far we know about sexual abuse, but of course that's physical abuse, period, right? That's multi-generational. So with Zora, this thing is playing out with her boyfriend. That is in the bloodline. Oh my God, look at that spiritual thing. They're dealing with this. So not only is it, you know, when we deal with her grand uncle abusing the women in her family and the other young ladies at the church, but you have her father who was an adulterer. And I'm saying it about the roles of men in her life. You know, for some people that may not be as serious, but hey, these are all problematic, because what does it say about the family unit and how are women being perceived and how are women being treated? You get the point. So this is multi-generational. So they have to belabor this point. Man, come on, y'all are doing some good writing on Greenleaf. Excuse me. So I was going to talk a little bit about the skanks, but I think I may not care. I mean, I love Basie. I think his character is so poetic. I'm curious to know if he's going to come back. I am bothered by Tasha Skank's accent. Now, I have not looked up this character's, the actor who plays this character, so if I'm wrong, Lord, please forgive me. But that sounds like a very fake Southern accent to me, and I got a problem with it, so somebody let me know if I'm wrong. So McKeep said, when you're in the violence, it is embarrassment involved, and she is ashamed, cannot believe this is happening to her. Reverend Skanks, he has a score to settle. Yes, yes, and yes. It is so true. You're right. You're exactly right. All those things are accurate. All those things are accurate. And so I would say, what are signs that we should be looking for people who may be abused, so we don't miss them, especially when they may be embarrassed or feel as though they can't come forth, ask for help. So yeah. Now I'm frustrated that people are trusting Tasha Skanks. Now I think Carissa is hip to the game. Carissa is very much, well, first of all, Carissa got a reason to be like leery of everybody. Let's just be honest. But okay, so you said ghetto Southern trying to be sophisticated accent. Yeah, but that Southern, her Southern part is driving me wild, because it sounds like some hillbilly stuff, and I'm like, that don't sound right to me. That hey, maybe y'all know. Let me be quiet before I get somebody mad at me tonight. But I think her accent is fake. So withdrawal and excuses from bruising, those are good signs and indicators of the abuse. And the withdrawal comes from her not participating in class. Remember, her teacher said that she was not participating in class, so that matters. So I am approaching the end. However, there's something that I want to drop for those of you who have not been doing your background research on this show, because I think it's something we need to talk about. How many of you know that the creator of this show is a white man who grew up Jewish? How many of y'all know that? Raise your hand. Somebody raise your hand. Did you know that, McKeever? I'm waiting for you. Did you see his fake singing? Yeah, with Isaiah. I know you got to be talking about Isaiah, because I saw that when they were messing up, when the woman was supposed to be singing, but he was pretending to be singing. I think that's what you're talking about. But we're going to get back on that later. Let me know if I'm right on that, but also tell me if you know that, yes, the creator of the show is a white man. Yes. Yes, he is. He's a white man, and he grew up Jewish, and he is Tasha too. Tasha did some fake singing. Oh, today, yeah. Not today, last night. Yeah, you're right. But the one that irked my nerves more was the last time that Isaiah was on stage and he did a duet with this girl. Literally, there was a time when it was the female voice supposed to be singing, and he was like doing the ad lib, and I was like, no, y'all, cut it out. But yeah. So yes, back to the creator of the show. So his name is Craig Wright. And so is he the one that speaks sometimes about the cast and scenes? He probably is, yes. That is how I first was introduced to him. But if you look him up, you can find him. But I'm a fan of his. So let me first say that for anybody. So, oh, here she go. But I want to tell you that I had a problem with this, and here's why. I'm always a proponent as a writer, as on the faith in ministry, and one who has entertainment interests. I'm always a proponent of knowing who is writing stories, right? Whether we acknowledge it or not, we are impacted by media. We're impacted by what we watch. We're impacted by what we listen to on the airwaves. And this show is about the Black church. So when I first learned, I'm like, okay, but the creator of the show is a white male. I'm like, okay. Now it's on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, a Black woman. But, you know, I love Mama Oprah. You know, I got the greatest respect for her. But Mama Oprah is touch and go to me with church. So I just had a problem. Had a bit of a problem with Craig Wright being the creator of the show. And by all means, as a creative, you can create whatever you want to. I believe in it, right? And I believe that my work will have more diverse aspects in the up and coming near future, by the way. So I believe it's doable, but I just want to make sure that we have the proper voices speaking to offer input when you are a person who's writing about a group of people that you're not a part of. You're not within this group. So I think we have to be very careful, because even in drama and things that are supposed to be fictitious, entertainment informs society. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, it does. Entertainment, media, things that we see out in the airways, on video, on the internet, you get the point. Listen to the radio. It informs society. There are many habits that people pick up. They don't even know it came from a television show or whatever they listen to. So I was very cautious when I saw that, because I'm like, oh, I need to know. Let's see. And that is probably why I was more into being concerned about it being too stereotypical at the beginning. But again, I already told you I'm okay with the balance. So now that I ragged on Craig a little bit about that, I do want to tell you about his background, because I love his story. So I already told you that he grew up with a rabbi. Craig actually had an interest in acting and songwriting, but he learned quickly that acting was not his thing. But he was writing the entire time. He was writing, and so he had some different big breaks. But somewhere in there, he got a little discouraged, and he decided to go to seminary. So he became a United Methodist Church pastor. Get that? He became a pastor for a little while. And while he was a pastor, though, he still continued to write his plays and such. And for anybody who knows anything about my diverse interests, I can totally relate to this. I'm like, wow, ministry and entertainment, people do things like that. Our Divine Franklin and T.D. Jakes, et cetera, et cetera. So back to Craig Wright, not Valencia. He was a pastor. Literally, he was a pastor, and he continued to write his plays. And one was read by some prominent people in Hollywood, and they called him up while he was a pastor. His wife said they left him a voicemail, and they're like, hey, we think that we can get you $450,000 a year in Hollywood. And so that's kind of like one of the bigger moments in his life. He definitely is candid. I read a great article on the Hollywood Reporter. As a matter of fact, I think I can share it with y'all if I still got it up. So y'all should read this, because it's pretty informative, and I thought it's also pretty brief to have the depth that it does. So if you care about stuff like this, if you're a nerd like me about stuff like this, check this article out. So you can read about Craig Wright. But yeah, so that's a pretty cool story. So now that I gave you the article, you can read it more for yourself. But yeah, so his story is pretty interesting and pretty cool. So because of his background, he was invited to go to viewing of a docuseries on OWN. And at the course of this thing, he got to meet Oprah. He and Oprah shared their common interests surrounding church. And he acknowledges in that article that I just said, he's like, I know about all white church in diverse ways, and Oprah's talking about the black church. And so through that, she brought him on to do Greenleaf. So I thought that was very interesting and very powerful. So I would love to, if I could talk to Mama Oprah myself and Mr. Craig Wright, I would love to hear about the dynamic for the show behind the scenes. Being that it is the black church, is it mostly Craig Wright's vision, or is it intertwined with perspectives of people who've experienced black church? So that's what I want to know. There was something else I want you to know in that article that I was shocked to see, but that I feel like they go back around and fix it. They literally have a statement. Oh, you can't click on it? I wonder why. So I click on it, and what happens? When I click on it, Makiba, it comes up for me. I don't know what that means, though. So hopefully after a while it'll work for you. I don't know. But what I was going to say is that, and I'll share it later on my status if that's helpful. They have a sentence in that article that says that Greenleaf is about how the love of money can be the root of all evil. And while we know that is scripture based, I'm very confused as to how can that be the basis of the show. Now, y'all tell me if I'm not thinking about something. Now, I will say where I do see it at play. It's at play in the way that okay, you're trying to the dark side. Okay, so it's at play in clearly Lady Mae needing to maintain her cush life, as my friend said to me. That's evidence of that. The way that the bishop, and I'm just gonna be honest with you, we have a ministry. It takes money to run a ministry. Now, I know that there are people who are not in church that got a lot to say about this, but you can't run a ministry without money. That's about mine. But the point is that, you know, they have to rub elbows with these big donors to make sure that they have this money coming in. So maybe that's one way they're trying to highlight that theme. We have it with it was somebody else. Somebody else. With Basie. Like Basie doing all kind of foolery. Foolery and foolishness to get money for the church. It was like, it's crazy, Basie. What are you doing? So yeah, Basie's doing that. Yeah, I think that's when we get into dangerous territory, when it's okay, this is supposed to be church, the church of God. And to maintain God's church, I'm saying God because I don't know if it's God's church anymore. You literally out here gambling and dealing with long sharks. It was just crazy what Basie was doing. But again, you said it earlier, Makiba. You said that he was trying to settle a score, and that's so true. Like, that's true what Basie's doing, but he has these moments where he seems to be also in ministry. So I don't know. Y'all have to tell me what you think about it, if that's a facade or if he's just a man who's torn in between two things, like where he truly wants to be a minister, but he's also like got this grimy life where he's trying to get back at the Greenleafs, I guess. I don't know. So so even though I gave that the side eye when they said that Greenleaf is about how the love of money is the root of all evil, I just off the cuff highlight some things that do correlate with that. So maybe that is the case. So I'm about to close out, and as I do, I want to mention one of the notes that I captured, quotes I should say, from the end of that article that I shared with you, and I love it because I think it's a good perspective to have about Oprah and Craig Wright and whomever else gives us Greenleaf. And it says, they had an intention to lovingly and respectfully interrogate the black church, not to tear it down at all, but to make it even better by asking tough questions. We both, so that would be Oprah and Craig, had experiences where we tried to ask more questions than people wanted to answer. I asked a question of my boss one time at the church, and he said, Craig, you can either work for the church or you can work on the church, but you cannot do both. Let me repeat that. He said, Craig, you can either work for the church or you can work on the church, but you can't do both. Wow. Now, I don't know about for y'all, but that particular quote, it moved me. Makiba, you said, did the deputy mayor really donate that money, or was the pastor just saying it publicly to get financing for his project? That's a great question, because I felt like when he had the original conversation with the deputy mayor, it was like a possibility. And I feel like, you know, though we don't know the time lapse, it's TV, I didn't feel like there was enough time for him to be able to make that announcement. So these are humans, not saints, heading and leading the flock. Hey, that is true. That is true. And I think that's very important to note, Makiba, because one of my pet peeves, I actually used to get into debates with somebody who was close to me back in the day about this. Being a person who, I come from a family with multi-generational ministers and preachers up and down and across the board. And so I would be very frustrated when I would meet people who, and I know why. There are different denominations of church that perpetuate this thing I'm going to say, so I know where it comes from. But I have a problem when people believe that people are saints, even if they're pastors or if they're leaders in ministry. They believe that these people are flawless, as though they are a part of the heavenly host. They're not. These are people. I believe that these are people who have accepted a charge and a call to fulfill and trying to bring others to come to know God and to come to know Christ. And don't get me wrong, there are standards to come along with that. You shouldn't perpetuate things that are evil or not of God or bad habits or maladaptive things that are going to hurt people. I believe that. Of course, there's a standard, but I also believe not only church people, but people who have no dealings with the church, they're very quick to quickly try to judge people in leadership in church and tear them down. The most immediate, perfect example, remember the Joel Osteen outcry we had just a couple of weeks back with the hurricane. So, and that's a problem for me. That's a big issue for me. First of all, I don't like people who judge other people, especially when I don't even know them in real life. That's a big problem for me, period. But for whatever reason, the days of social media, everybody has everything to say about everybody. And I think it's hilarious that people think that they're now experts in other people's lives and what they should and should not be doing. Now they're on the throne and now they're judging. So anyways, y'all can tell I feel some kind of way, like I told you. So Makiba said, you don't believe there are levels of sin. I understand that human flesh can be tempted. So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that sin is on the equal playing field. Is that what you mean? That sin is on an equal playing field? Or are you saying that people in leadership in church, their sin is equal to that of people who are not church leaders? Is that what you mean? And I'm talking to Makiba for those of you waiting. So, right. Okay. Yeah, I think so. The problem, though, is that people don't have that viewpoint. People literally believe that those in church leadership have a different level. Now, do not misunderstand me. I by no means am trying to suggest that church leaders have a right to mishandle their call or misrepresent God or, I don't. I do believe that there is a greater responsibility. I do believe that. But I believe the same blood of Jesus Christ, that is good for the parishioner is good for the pastor. I believe that. So, hey, but I'm going to put a pin in that. Because first of all, this ain't sermon night, Makiba. So you're trying to have me doing a sermon, and that ain't what the night is. This is laid back conversation night. So anyway, I thank you all for watching, and I thank you, Makiba, so much. Thank you for chiming in so that we can have an actual dialogue back and forth. This one was a good conversation with myself and Makiba typing. But yeah, clearly I had a whole bunch of ideas about Greenleaf, but I already told you why. Like, I grew up in church, so this is my life that I would definitely be ready to see what y'all got to say about. But no, so I like it. Those are sheep following versus learning what someone has to teach. Amen. Yes and yes. I completely agree. Well, it's now 1:39 a.m. on Friday morning. So I guess I better take my tail to bed. I'm just laughing at how this late night thing has been my thing, late night special with Valencia, the visionary. So, so anyway, I'm going to get off here so I can go to bed. I'm tired. I'm actually tired, but this is what you got to do. You're mama and you got a full life, right? So good night, everyone. All you people who are chiming in and tuning in, go to sleep. And I will see y'all next week with some other stuff. Be blessed. Bye-bye. All right.